All right, good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council meeting. The council thanks you for being part of your city government. At meetings, the City Council takes formal action on items, holds public hearings, and conducts other business of the city. Following Governor Inslee's statewide mask mandate, facial masks are required to be worn at all times while in the council chambers. If any individual is unable to comply with this order, then the meeting will either be recessed until compliance is met. If compliance is not met and the individual refuses to leave the chambers, then the meeting will either recess and reconvene only virtually or be adjourned. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. Please note that the City Council meetings may be accessed through GoToWebinar. This meeting is also being televised live on Pasco TV channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, and YouTube channel. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. And lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. And as you may all be aware of, I do not quite, I'm not the mayor, but I am acting the mayor tonight as the mayor unfortunately is out for the evening. So with that, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Campos.
Present.
Milne.
Present.
Roach.
Present.
Serrano. Yes. And Torres.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Present.
All six accounted for, Mayor.
All right, thank you. And with that, I'd ask you to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item, our consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by a roll call vote as one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If further discussion is desired by council members or the public, the item may be removed from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and considered separately. First item on the consent agenda is the approval of meeting minutes from January 3rd of 2022. Bills and communications to approve claims in the total amount of $4,889,774.94. A resolution for a bid award for Burns Road Pathway Phases 1, 2, 3, and North Road 93/Powerline Pathway. And a resolution for amendment number 2 to the purchase and sale agreement for Columbia Basin College student housing. A resolution for City Council representation on community boards and or committees for 2022 to 2023. And that's all on the consent agenda. Is there any items that the members of the public or council would like to remove from this? If not, Mr. Campos, do you want to make a motion for this?
I'm going to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as read.
You want the consent agenda?
The consent agenda as read.
Thank you. Do we hear a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Serrano. With that, roll call, please.
Councilmember Serrano.
Yes.
Councilmember Campos.
Yes.
Councilmember Torres.
Present.
Councilmember Milne.
Yes.
Councilmember Roach.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Yes.
Great. Passes unanimously.
All right, thank you for that. All right, well, the next item on the agenda is proclamations and acknowledgements. And we do have a couple items listed here. First, we have a proclamation proclaiming February 2022 as Black History Month. Mr. Zabel, do you have any opening remarks on this?
Mayor, this is a product of your Arts and Culture Commission, trying to stay on top of significant cultural events that occur in our community. So they forwarded this on, and is now we'll see it as a regular part going forward, as we will other such recognitions.
Okay, great. Thank you, City Manager Zabel. And I'll go ahead and read through some of the proclamation for the audience here. So whereas in 1926, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History sponsored a National History Week to celebrate and promote achievements by Black Americans and other peoples of African descent, which inspired schools and communities nationwide to organize local celebrations, establish history clubs, and host performances and lectures. And whereas in the decades that followed, many college campuses began recognizing Black History Month. And whereas in 1976, President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month and called upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And whereas since 1976, during the month of February, our nation takes pause to reflect on the injustices and struggles fought and overcome by African Americans throughout our nation's history, and to pay tribute to the battles that they have fought in the name of equality. And whereas our community and lives are shaped by the tremendous contributions of African Americans who have used art as a vehicle for communicating beliefs, aspirations, observations, joys, despair, resistance, and inequality. And whereas the 2022 theme, Black Health and Wellness, acknowledges the legacy of not only Black scholars and medical practitioners in Western medicine, but also other ways of knowing, for example, birth workers, doulas, midwives, naturopaths, and herbalists, and considering activities, rituals, and initiatives that the Black community have done to be well. And whereas the city of Pasco has its own experience with some of the first African Americans settling in Pasco to work in the rail industry, and followed by greater numbers to contribute to the Manhattan Project in the 1940s, and in the process have deeply enriched Pasco's history with culture, skill, and service. Therefore, Blanche Barajas, the mayor of Pasco, on behalf of the entire city council, has proclaimed February 2022 as Black History Month. So with that, take any comments from council if they'd like to make any statements to along with this, and want to confirm with staff that there is no members of the public here to speak on this matter.
Not this evening, Mayor.
So any members of council want to say a few words? Well, if not, I will. I think it's certainly important to acknowledge that one of our own members of our Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Commission was recognized as the MLK award recipient of the year, and Ms. Naima Chambers-Smith received that award, I believe, yesterday. And so that is I think a wonderful accomplishment, and I think a recognition that the members of our Inclusion and Equity and Diversity Commission are very active in this community and trying to support equality and equity for all members of our community. So, I think it's a wonderful thing, and congratulations to Ms. Chambers-Smith for receiving that award. So with that, I'll go ahead and move on to the next item if there's no other comments. So next item, another proclamation proclaiming Community Risk Reduction Week. Is Chief Gear available to speak on behalf of this item?
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, yes, I am. I'm really happy to actually introduce a person that all of you, I'm sure, know, our Community Risk Reduction Specialist, Ben Shear, who will talk about this. But I think what's important to recognize is the work that Ben has done to become kind of a rock star around the state, especially, if not actually nationally, in community risk reduction and what that really means, and how it's moved from just fire prevention programs to what are all the risks to the people that we serve. It can be anything from smoke detectors to fall prevention to cooking safety. And Ben has done an outstanding job with that. And I'm happy to see he's on here, and he's going to talk about his proclamation.
Great, Mr. Shear, are you available for us?
Yeah, thank you, Chief, for those words. Though I can't take all the credit. We have an amazing city here, an amazing department that has looked out. As we look back in our data and our history, we realize that our call numbers are increasing, not just as the city increases in population, but lots of other factors as well too. And so we started reaching out to try and find programs that we could help our citizens not just not call 911, but actually have more successful lives, less fire loss, less medical loss in our community that would then help our department not respond as many times, be more efficient. And so the community risk reduction is a national movement. And it really is, like the chief said, it's beyond education programs. So as you see in the proclamation, it's actually, there's 5 different E's involved there. Education, which is my big soapbox that I like to stand on and get prevention awareness out there. Engineering, which of course is not really our fire department. The city has their own building department, which handles code enforcement and the engineering part of planning. Emergency response, which your fire department does an amazing job at when you look at our response numbers. But we realize that those do not handle everything, and it's hard to get people to listen to messages. So that's where economic incentive comes in. So the building department using buy-offs on programs, like working with other big projects coming in, trying to get them to build to code. We can do other things to help them and negotiate some of those costs, which is actually a win to the community. And by placing all 5 of those E's together, it's actually a better job for our community and makes our community a better place. So the leaders in CRR decided when they started looking for a week that we could proclaim and help drive these initiatives forward, we realized that Martin Luther King Jr. Day was already a day of service to communities. And that's why we've sponsored this week to coincide with Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is recognized as a day of service to communities. That's truly what we do here. And that's really what the city of Pasco government is all about, is serving our citizens. And so really Community Risk Reduction Week is about the city serving its citizens altogether. Thank you for recognizing that. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for helping us produce this.
Great, thank you, Mr. Shearer. And I'll go ahead and read through the proclamation. I think that emphasizes some of those very same points. So thank you for your words. So whereas Pasco Fire Department responded to 30 structure fires in 2021, and whereas the fire department responds to a growing number of medical calls for services, medical calls for service, surpassing 80% of total call volume. And whereas community risk reduction is a data-informed process to identify and prioritize local risks, followed by integrated and strategic investment of resources to reduce their occurrence and impact. And whereas the value of community support from local, state, and national partners to address community risks is recognized to meet the demands of the fire service. And whereas the goal of community risk reduction is to reduce the occurrence and impact of emergency events for both community members and emergency responders through deliberate action in the areas of the 5 E's of education, engineering, enforcement, emergency response, and economic incentive. And whereas most fire-related and many medical calls for service are preventable, with the 5 E's performed as part of an integrated community risk reduction program. And whereas Monday, January 17th, 2022, is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and is nationally recognized as a National Day of Service and an opportunity for communities to reduce the risk in their community through a series of educational and other programs. So now I Craig Maloney, Mayor Pro Tem of City of Pasco, Washington, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim January 17th to 22nd as Community Risk Reduction Week. So thank you again, Mr. Shearer, for all the hard work you've done on that program. Any other comments from council members? Mr. Mill.
Yeah, just like to say that I'm so appreciative of our fire department and all the good hard work, and I love it when I get the chance to go out to the fire stations and meet with the brave officers, and I just, again, always impressed with the good things that they've done, and again, can't say enough about them. Thank you.
Great, absolutely echo those sentiments. Any of our council members remotely, any comments to add?
This is Councilmember Roach, and I just want to echo Councilmember Milne's sentiment about our Pasco Fire Department. Have a great appreciation for them, and would also love to go on a ride-along. So when we can make that happen and it works for you guys, I am open to doing that. Thanks.
right, thank you, Councilmember Roach. Any other comments? All right, again, thank you, Mr. Shearer, and all of our fire department staff that helps with this community risk reduction. Really appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to next item on the agenda, visitors other than agenda items. This item is to provided to allow citizens the opportunity to bring items to the attention of the City Council or to express an opinion on an issue. Its purpose is not to provide a venue for debate or for the posing of questions with the expectation of an immediate response. Some questions require consideration by council over time and after a deliberative process with input from a number of different sources. Some questions are best directed to staff members who have access to specific information. Citizen comments will normally be limited to 3 minutes each by the mayor. Those with lengthy messages are invited to summarize their comments and or submit written information for the consideration by the council outside of formal meetings. With that, is there any members of the public that would like to speak to the council tonight? See no one in the audience. Staff, is there anyone online that is signed up to make public comment?
No visitors online.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and move on to the next item here, reports from committees and or officers. So verbal reports from council members. Does any other council members have a meeting or other items that they'd like to speak on? Mr. Campos.
Ben Franklin Transit, as you know, their director, she is going to be leaving, and we at our board meeting were able to find a interim manager, and I think everyone's excited to see the transition. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Campos. Any other reports from council members? All right, I'll have just one item to add from my perspective. Earlier today, almost exactly 6 o'clock, the Pasco Public Facility District Board voted to move forward with a ballot proposition for the April 26th ballot. So more to come on that, but they voted in favor of that, and so that will be moving forward down the process to go on the ballot and give the citizens of Pasco an opportunity to weigh in on what they see of this as and whether they see this as the right direction for the city. So excited that's finally moving forward. It's been a long time coming. I think one of the board members said he's been on the board for nearly 20 years, and they've been talking about this project for that entire length of time. So they're very excited for it to move to that next step of hearing from the public. All right, seeing no other council members lights up for a report, move on to item 8, hearings and council actions on ordinances and resolutions relating thereto. First item we have is a public hearing and ordinance for the Thanksgiving Partnership Annexation Proceedings. Director White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem and Council. This item concerns annexation of a parcel containing a little more than 80 acres. It's located east of Capitol Avenue, roughly half a mile or so south of Foster Wells Road. The owners have progressed through the annexation process and recently submitted a legally sufficient petition to annex the entire parcel. There are utilities available of industrial capacity in Capitol Avenue, and staff is recommending council approval of the proposed annexation ordinance.
All right, great. Any questions for Director White from council before I open the public hearing? All right, hearing none. I'll go ahead and open a public hearing. Any members of the public interested in speaking on this item? Seeing none in chambers, I'll check in with staff again to make sure that we have no one online to sign up to speak on this matter.
There is no one on the public.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I missed.
There's no one from the public on to speak.
Thank you, Director Akai. All right, with that, a second call. Any members from the public want to speak on behalf of this item? Third and final call. Seeing and hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4572 relating to annexation and annexation certain real property to City of Pasco and further authorize publication by summary only.
All right, we have a motion in front of us. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that. Councilman Millie.
Seconded by Council Millie. With that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to the next item. Public meeting and resolution accepting a notice of intent for Lamb 5 LLC annexation. Director White again.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and council, and we're nearing our 10-year average here on annexations in one season, but this is a proposal to annex originally, as you can see on the screen, roughly 9 acres at the very northwest corner of Road 68 and Court. Staff, using recorded outside utility agreements, has proposed expanding the original annexation request to include a total of about 98 acres that, of course, are on both sides of Court Avenue, again, as you can see on the overhead. The next steps include a public hearing for a zoning determination in front of the hearing examiner and a recommendation to council. And then, given the nature of the proposed annexation, it's very likely that we'll be holding one or more neighborhood meetings to address concerns relating to the property owners that are within the proposed annexation area.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. White. And I appreciate the idea of the making sure that the public that's being affected by this is well engaged. With that, any questions of Director White before I open up public hearing? Or public meeting, my apologies.
I do.
Okay, Councilman Serrano.
Mr. White, I heard you say originally 9 acres, now 98 acres, but we're focused squarely on, well, just the red square, right?
Well, with the acceptance of the intent to petition, we can expand it. Once it's approved by council, we can always reduce the boundaries, but we can never expand them. So yes, the original intent was on the red square outlined on the overhead, but the annexation process will include the entire 98-acre area. If we get to a point where it's simply wise not to include that entire 98-acre area, we can again lessen it, but we cannot expand it.
Okay, and to be clear, that's the green slide, the green and red slide. It's not up there.
Oh, it's yes, Mr.
Yeah, I think
Serrano.
maybe. Okay, I just wanted to confirm I wasn't misreading our maps.
No, you're not.
So, are we sitting at the 10% or higher threshold when we expand that, or is that going to be a risk of missing some of our bullet points?
No, we're right at roughly 61%.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure. I mean, I know you guys keep us in check, but I want to make sure. Thanks.
Great questions. Covered a lot of what I was looking for. Any other questions for Director White before I open the public meeting? All right, hearing none, I'll go ahead and conduct a public meeting. And Mr. Ferguson, just to make sure we're seeing this as a public meeting as opposed to a public hearing, same protocol functionally as a public hearing, or is it just a?
Not really. It's kind of an oddity of the statute that the council annexations go way back before open public meetings, and so this particular provision is a little odd in the sense that it requires that when somebody files a notice, the council is to receive that notice, and then within 60 days it's supposed to have a public meeting with the initiators, allowing them to come in and essentially make their case to the council. So it's just a matter of a formality of opening the hearing to someone who may be with the initiators who want to testify. So you don't need to go through the same formalities as with a public hearing, but if you'd like to, we typically just have one call and move on, but there's usually no one here to talk about it.
Great, and if I heard you correctly, you said that only the petitioners are to speak to it, no other member of the public, or any member of the public?
No, that's correct. It's a meeting with the initiators of the notice. So really, it's not really up for, there will be a subsequent public hearing just like we had for the previous one, but this isn't that time.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
Yes.
So are the petitioners here tonight? Are they available virtually?
No.
All right. Well, with that, then I suppose I will go ahead and close the public meeting if they're not here to speak.
Can I just ask a process question here?
Please.
Eric, or Mr. Ferguson, did we have to provide notice to those petitioners? And if so, did we complete that step in the process, Mr. White? Or someone? Okay, I see head nods. For those who aren't able to see our wonderful staff, those are affirmatives. The notice was provided to the petitioners. Thank you.
Great, thank you. For a motion then.
Councilman Campos, I move to approve resolution number 4140, accepting a notice of intent to commence annexation proceedings for the Lamb 5 LLC annexation, providing a determination on the boundary to be annexed, and whether simultaneous zoning and the assumption of bonded indebtedness will be required.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Was that Councilmember Torres or Roach?
Torres. It was Torres.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councilmember Torres. With that, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you for that. All right, moving on to item number 9, ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearings. And this is a quasi-judicial matter, an ordinance for Thanksgiving Limited Partnership zoning determination. I'll ask Director White to kick us off, and then I'll ask Mr. Ferguson to hit the next step.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Council. And just very quickly, of course, Council just reviewed the Thanksgiving Partnership annexation. This action by Council would determine zoning to take place once the annexation ordinance is effective. The hearing examiner conducted a public hearing in November on the zoning determination and has forwarded a recommendation of I-1, industrial light zoning, which of course matches all the other properties in this vicinity. So with that, unless there's any questions, I'll ask legal for their input on quasi-judicial hearings.
Thank you, Director White. Mr. Ferguson, can you speak and make sure we're all above board here?
Sure, you bet. So as we've went over the last couple of weeks, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. It's to render a final decision on the materials that are presented. It's defined as a proceeding in which the council defines the legal rights, duties, or privileges of specific parties in a hearing or other contested proceeding. The appearance of fairness doctrine applies, and the hearing must be fair in 3 respects: form, substance, and appearance. All council members should consider whether they have potential conflicts as follows. A demonstrated bias for or against any other parties. B, any direct or indirect financial interest in the outcome of the proceedings which would affect the council members personally. C, whether there has been any prejudgment of the issues prior to the hearing of the facts. D, whether there has been any ex parte contact with anyone other than staff prior to this hearing. And finally, E, any other conflict where the council member believes would prevent them from hearing this matter fairly and impartially. If any council member has any of these concerns or disclosures, now would be the time to make those known.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Any council members need to disclose any items as related to Mr. Ferguson's direction there? Are there any members of the public that would like to disqualify one of the council members? Hearing none on both those matters, that puts us in good stead there, and I would ask for a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies. Let me go ahead and ask, is there any questions for staff regarding this matter prior to the motion? All right, hearing none, I would ask for a motion if you could.
Councilman Campos, I move to adopt ordinance number 4573, assigning a L1 zoning to the Thanksgiving Limited Partnership annexation area as recommended by the hearing examiner, and further authorize publication by summary only.
All right, we have a motion in front of us. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Serrano. With that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving on to item 9B, a resolution for surplus of city property at 4802 Kalahari Drive. Director Ratkai.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Good evening, Zach Ratkai, ACS Director. As you know, for the last number of years, City of Pasco has identified certain designated parcels that are really surplus to city need, and we've identified those for sale to the general public. Typically, we go through a process where we determine which parcel remain in the surplus status, identify whether it's in use to the city or not, and then identify a price, usually through market analysis or comparative analysis. So the item brought before you this evening is parcel number 117-220-525, but more commonly known as 4802 Kalahari Drive. It is in, it has remained vacant and under city ownership. We were approached by a member of the public to purchase the property. Comparative cost analysis for the property put the market rate at $105,000. And we are asking the council through resolution to approve surplus of this property in order to make it eligible for sale. This time I'll take any questions of council.
All right, thank you, Director Rakai. Any questions for staff on this matter? All right, hearing none, I'd like to invite a motion for the surplus of 4802 Kalahari Drive.
Councilman Campos, I move to approve resolution number 4141, approving the surplus of this certain real property at 4802 Kalahari Drive, and further authorize the city manager to sell the property through realtor listing for a minimum price determined through market analysis.
All right, thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Seconded by Councilmember Milne. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving on to item C, which is a resolution purchase and sale agreement for 4802 Kalahari Drive. Director Rakai, any further information for us?
Once again, good evening. Yeah, this is the purchase of said property that we just surplused. We did receive an offer of $105,000. It has been accepted by the buyer. Purchase and sale agreement is attached to this item for council review, and staff presents this resolution for approval.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from council? All right, hearing none, I'd ask for a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 4142, approving the purchase and sale agreement between the City of Pasco and AJ Wade for property located at 4802 Kalahari Drive, and further to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
All right, we have a motion in front of us. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second.
Was that Councilmember Torres?
Oh, yeah, sorry, if not, he can have it.
No, that's fine. He's ceding it to you. So seconded by Councilmember
Okay.
Torres. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. All right, on to item D, resolution for an amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with CKJT for design of new animal control facility. Director Rakai again.
Yeah, I'll just leave my microphone on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. The item brought before this evening is an amendment to the professional services contract for the architecture of the animal shelter. As you recall, last April we approved the on-site design to CKJT Architects. Throughout this project, we obviously have identified a new location that was gone through with the original PSA. There were, in our work cooperatively with the Pasco Public Works Department, we identified some standing capital improvement projects, which are water line extensions down 18th Avenue. And we figured that while there was under design with on-site engineering to design utilities to convey to the animal shelter, that we would put these public improvement projects associated with the animal shelter under the same contract, therefore providing coordination both in design as well as bidding to have a comprehensive project to this entire neighborhood. So this is 3 formal projects with some construction support. Project 1 is really core expansion of the project, and that's an additional $9,437.50. And really that is to provide some of the on-site investigation for moving the proposed site for the new animal shelter from the west side of the current animal shelter to this location you see on your screen and in your exhibit of the packet. Project 2 is the water line extension and replacement. So that's outlined on the map as an 8-inch water line. Currently there's a 2-inch water line serving that area, which is at a sizable deficit for domestic use, domestic being just normal day-to-day use, but also including fire protection systems in the new animal shelter. This line needs to be expanded. That'll be funded through, as a capital project, through Pasco water rates as planned through the capital improvement plan. And then project 3, we identified the expansion and roadway improvements. Of course, as you dig up 18th and Washington to put in a water line, you have to repave the surface that you dug up. But we also noted that West Washington Street could be expanded to include on-street parking to serve the animal shelter, also overflow parking for Little League events at the Little League ball fields directly to the east, as you see on the rendering. And then the red line on your rendering and exhibit is a relocation of the Sacagawea Heritage Trail around the animal shelter site to also serve as adjacent sidewalk for pedestrians and users alike, but also to continue the recreational trail in that area that is well utilized. So project 2, the water line extension, is $20,480 for this is just design. And then project 3, the roadway improvements and trail relocation for design, is $66,143, and that'll be paid through real estate excise tax. Additional support from the engineering to staff to help with bidding and everything is another $5,600. So the total to this amendment is an additional $101,660.50. I'll take any questions at this time.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Director Akai. Any questions from council? Councilmember Campos.
Just to confirm, because I don't have a lot of history with the previous project, it sounds like very clearly you took a project, you were able to condense it, you're making it more efficient.
Yep.
Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Awesome.
In a sense, yes.
All right, great. Thank you. Any other questions from council? All right, hearing none. Entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 4143, authorizing city manager to sign and execute amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with CKJT Architects PLC for architectural services related to the new animal shelter facility in the amount of $101,660.50. Wow.
All right.
I'll second that. This is Councilmember Roach.
All right, seconded by Councilmember Roach. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion approved unanimously. And Director Akai, I know the community is very excited to see this project moving forward, and as Councilmember Campos indicated, the extra bang for the buck, fantastic.
Yep,
So
thank you.
thank you very kindly. With that, that wraps up item 9. Item 10, unfinished business, nothing listed. 11, new business, nothing listed. And moves us to 12, miscellaneous discussion. City Manager Zabel.
Just a couple items this evening, Mr. Chair. The first being Lake Council, where the employee banquet, because of our high COVID numbers, we've rescheduled that to March 18th. And so we'll get a more formal announcement out to you about that. And then secondly, as you'll note on miscellaneous on the agenda, there's a couple of different items for council to consider. We're in the legislative session, and oftentimes mayor or other city officials are asked to sign on to letters of support relating to different pieces of legislation out there. Many times that those requests are very consistent with council's legislative agenda. The 2 tonight are, and other times they might not be. And generally that's something the mayor contemplates whether or not he or she will sign. Bringing these 2 items to you tonight, and Deputy City Manager Lincoln is kind of managing our legislative agenda this session, and I'm going to turn it over to him to kind of walk through the 2 requests tonight.
Thank you. So the first item on there is it's a letter from local law enforcement officials to a couple of key legislators regarding some of the impacts of the laws that changed during the previous session. Basically, Police Chief Roski signed on and gave an example of an incident that we had here in town, a tragedy where a gentleman was attacked and murdered on a school bus, and an example where the tactics to intervene were different because of the change in laws. Certainly this seemed to staff to be in line with the legislative agenda, and first just wanted to make sure we had everyone's okay to sign on to that. So I'm seeing some nodding heads, just making sure we're in line there, or if there's anybody who's not, we'd just like to hear now to make sure we're not signing on when you don't want us to.
Right, council, any comments or questions? Obviously there's, it's a joint letter, so I think the opportunity for us to revise may be very limited. But anyone have any issues with the mayor signing on to this? Right, hearing none at this point in time, I support it, and yeah, I think no further questions on that.
Thank you. The second item is again just basically signing on in support of new transportation investments and ensuring that the investment into infrastructure is going to take place in a timely manner and in a priority. It becomes a priority, especially given our local list of items that are transportation based. So this, I don't believe it was anything that was asking for new revenue streams at this time. It was just making sure that the projects keep moving and that we are exploring options out there. Again, just making sure that's an okay letter to sign on to for council.
All right, any questions or comments from council? Councilor Serrano.
Mr. Lincoln, in looking at this, I glanced at these. Obviously, I read the letter and then glanced at the three PowerPoint presentations that we have. It looked like nothing was really hitting back here at Pasco as far as these particular investments. Is there a stronger play? I mean, I don't think we risk anything by signing on to this letter, but is there a stronger Pasco-centric message that can be sent specifically addressing these issues? If so, I'd be interested in exploring that before signing on to. I'm not saying I oppose this. It's just, you know, these are kind of generic overall statewide goals. When we want to use our political capital, if there's, you know, I mean, we work, not we, but we plus the legislature work like mad to get that money for the Lewis Street overpass. Obviously, we don't have that kind of funding request, but is there something that brings it back? For example, the Road 100 or something of that nature that we could say, we want to use almost all of our capital here. Sure, we'll sign on to this, but we want to focus elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would just say that the efforts of your lobbyist team, Gordon Thomas Honeywell, they put a lot of emphasis on knowing when to expend that political capital. And obviously they know your legislative agenda front and back. So I would say that this is something they were suggesting that we sign on to. And like you said, it's maybe not as large scale or as in your face as some of the face-to-face efforts that they're making. But certainly they're going to expend that capital on the projects that are denoted in your list. And I think that's their tact, and it's much more effective, obviously, to have that face-to-face. In fact, staff met with a handful of the delegation a couple weeks ago, I think now, and we were able to certainly better articulate the priorities for the city of Pasco specifically. Not sure if city manager has anything to add.
Yeah, I would just add that a letter like this, I think what the authors are looking for is unanimity among all the cities and support, kind of conveying that message to the different members of the legislature that this is really important. So it's not necessarily, as you mentioned, it's not specific to any particular project. Deputy City Manager mentions we do have those in our legislative agenda and we're working those, but this is really just making sure that the backlog, in an effort to try to work that backlog, which a couple of our projects are part of that, like SR 12, is something that's at the forefront.
Who's this going to? Just generically, the legislators, one of the committees, ranking members? I mean, it starts off with dear legislatures. I mean, I'm probably digging way too deep into this. I just, again, you know, I don't think this hurts us in any way. It'd just be nice to know who our target audience is, and a little bit more of what we leverage out of it.
I think that it's probably targeted towards transportation committee members. However, that doesn't mean that it's not going to go to a slightly wider audience, but that's what it looks like to me as well. I see it's not extremely clear there in the letter.
Right. So I'd say if we could kind of, look, if we got to sign it tonight, that's one thing. If we can tweak it, maybe make it more fungible so we know what exactly who we're addressing, that'd be helpful. But if this is coming from GTA, Gordon Thomas Honeywell, obviously they know their audience and they know how they've written it. So anyway, like I said, when we look at signing on these letters, I want to make sure that we have a specific ask, or it's tied to something where maybe it can help us garner more leverage elsewhere. Let's put it that way.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Any other comments or questions on this letter? All right,
Thank you. I feel we had sufficient direction on both. Appreciate that.
Great, thank you, Mr. Zabel. Any other miscellaneous discussion out of staff?
Not this evening.
All right, great. I do want to ask one item based off of what something that Councilmember Serrano brought up last meeting, and very relevant to our legislative agenda is there. I've now heard that that the state legislature is holding some public hearings about potential allowances of some income tax, and I believe our legislative agenda does not address that in any way. So I would ask my fellow council members if they'd be supportive of adding an oppose to any income tax elements at the state legislature. So I guess I'd ask for a discussion around the council, and we don't necessarily have to make a decision tonight, but if we have a majority of council that's interested in moving forward in that, then I think we can probably ask staff and our lobbyists to maybe help us put together what that would look like. So with that, discussion around council?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it's a great, not a great continuing thing. It's unfortunate we're talking about it, but it's good that we are talking about it. I obviously support that. As I mentioned last week, I kicked a draft resolution with a draft ordinance to amend PMC. I think it was like 3.35. Obviously, I'm not the city attorney, and I don't pretend to play him up here. I'm nowhere near as good looking as Eric, or highly paid. No. I know he's shaking his head yes for all those. Attorneys can't lie. No. Anyway, I obviously support that, and I'm hoping that we can bring to fruition some type of either resolution that directs staff to prepare an ordinance, or if I'm somewhere on point, we can bring an ordinance that simply bans it and allow a future council to appeal it if they should be so inclined. That's kind of my take. That way we can truly put it in the code for now. And again, if some future council changes the mind, that's their prerogative. We have ordinances that come and go before us. So totally support that, and hopefully we'll get to both levels.
Any other conversation around council?
Just a question for general public and everyone. I just want to make sure we're going to give this traction because we think the state legislature might give this attention, and we want to make sure it doesn't reach us.
That's correct. Why I'm bringing this up is because I'm seeing hearings being scheduled for discussion of income taxes or allowing local jurisdictions to implement income taxes. And so I believe that's an actionable thing that we can do something with. And so that's the reason why I'm interested in potentially adding that to our legislative agenda to oppose any such actions by the state legislature.
I'm in favor of seeing what we draft up.
Yeah, just for background, it's Senate Bill 5554, so 5554 by Hasagawa. This was kind of what kicked me off in the conversation last week. And, not to get too into the weeds, but the Supreme Court declined to hear the income tax issue, so it kind of died-ish, but is potentially being resurrected through legislation, and which is the expressed concern that both Councilman Maloney and I share, is that it's an open question constitutionally. Most people believe it's constitutionally null and void, but because the Supreme Court declined to hear it, there's no binding precedent. And then obviously if the legislature so desires to modify it, you know, the bill doesn't necessarily mean it's constitutional, but if it passes, nonetheless, we have to figure out how to deal with it. So if we can cut it off at the pass, I think that's our approach here.
I'd also be supportive of your initiative to, yeah, definitely no on income tax. So thank you for bringing this up.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Milne. Any other council members? Councilmember Torres or Councilmember Roach?
Councilmember Torres, I am also in support, and I would definitely like to see the draft as well.
Councilmember Roach? No need to speak up, just giving you, make sure you have the opportunity because I can't see your light.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I guess this is an avenue I'd be more interested in as opposed to pursuing it on the resolution level. So it's a go ahead, green light.
All right, great. All right, thank you, Council. Mr. Zabel, Mr. Lincoln, is that clear what Council is asking for in this matter?
I believe so.
And specifically to discussing the bringing up of an amendment to our legislative agenda that would be in opposition of a local income tax or income tax initiatives at the state level. I'm sure that our lobbyists can figure that out, how to say that way better than I can. I appreciate their efforts on that.
We'll try to get that back next week.
Okay, great. Thank you, City Manager Zabel. With that, any other miscellaneous discussion for this evening? All right, if not, I'll move on to the next item.
I'll just simply add, I still would like to bring it the one step further and have staff prepare a resolution and an ordinance that bans it.
Okay, and we had a conversation about this, and I don't think we had all the council members weigh in, so I'm not sure we came to a firm conclusion on whether to direct staff to do so. So with that, I guess let's ask around the room. I know we're missing Councilmember Barajas, but Councilmember Sarandos in favor. I continue to be opposed for the resolution. I don't think it changes anything, but I think that the lobbying agenda is different. I think it does an action we can take. Councilmember Campos, do you have
I'm not opposed to it, but my caveat is just want to be cautious of how much time we ask staff to spend on something that again cannot be enforceable or may not be enforceable because we have a lot of other important work to do. And not that this isn't important. That's my one caution is how much time are we spending on it? Could we be spending on other things if it's not enforceable or actionable?
Councilmember Mill?
I'm obviously in favor of Mr. Serrano's.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Torres and Councilmember Roach, I'm going to ask you both if you could please weigh in because I don't think we gave staff adequate direction last week, and I'd like to make sure that we can, come to a conclusion on this matter.
Well, Councilmember Torres, I'm in favor of moving forward.
Okay, and then Councilmember Roach?
Yeah, this is Councilmember Roach, and I would just say that, at the resolution level, it just seems more symbolic than have teeth, which we could ask staff to spin their wheels and get going on that, but kind of in the same lane as Councilmember Campos on this one. So, like I said before, I prefer the legislative agenda approach as opposed to the resolution. So that's where I'm at.
Great. With that clarity, Mr. Zabel, I think we came up with a split. So
maybe this would help a little bit. This is of all the things that we really have going on right now and working on, this is a real easy one because we've done them before and we've already got a draft in this case. So I think literally we're talking half an hour to put into giving some options, and I think maybe that would help the discussion if they saw the different options and what potential avenues might be.
I will note that I think Mayor Barajas had indicated an opposition previously, but I don't want to put words in her mouth at another meeting. Mr. Zabel, any thoughts on how to proceed from here? I'm not asking you to weigh in on the validity of either of them. I just want to make sure that we're taking a reasonable approach for staff and providing you adequate direction.
Yeah, I think as the city attorney indicated, probably have a sense of what a resolution might look like or even what it would take to change a code. We also have the issue the Senate Bill 5554. I don't know, I think it probably makes for a good conversation. I think if you just bring back the legislative, a new legislative plank, you're probably going to wind up talking about the resolution anyway, so might not hurt just to have a broad discussion. The council can decide at that meeting which direction they want to go and give direction to staff, and we'll have either a revised legislative agenda at your next regular meeting, or we'll have a resolution, or we'll have both.
Okay. Councilmember Campos.
So one and done then, okay? Yeah, let's go for it.
Talk about it once more and be done.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm with that, and I just want to be clear, the resolution would do, I would hope, one of two things, either direct staff to adopt or propose an amendment to the PMC, or utilize the amendment to the PMC that I already drafted and proposed. So, as Eric said, there's a draft there. I don't know where it sits as far as how close we are in the bailiwick.
No, I think, yeah, we're crystal clear on what the goal was, and I think we can amend it pretty quickly and get
Okay.
back. Yep,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that.
You bet.
Mr. Ferguson, a matter of process, if it's amending a PMC, it would be an ordinance,
That's correct.
not a resolution, is that?
That's correct. There's more formal, obviously, which require ordinances, and this obviously is a formal action of council that would require amending the code, so it's an ordinance. But then there are obviously things you can do as a resolution that wouldn't actually put this in the PMC, but it would be a binding expression of the council, less formal than an ordinance.
I guess I'm just lost. I heard amendment of a PMC, and then I heard a resolution, and we talked about resolution before, so I'm crosswise, and I apologize for being confused here. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
So my preference is one of two things with this. Not talking to the legislative agenda, but specifically to this. Either a resolution that directs staff to adopt or draft an amendment to the PMC for us to discuss and then adopt, or in the alternative, if the city attorney reviews the resolution that I've got, which bakes in an amendment to the code, if those two separately work, the resolution is adequate, the PMC modification is adequate, I'd like to see that brought forward. So feasibly, we could see an amendment to the code if that is legally sufficient. And I think that, to me, is the end-all be-all, that we modify the code. No different than we did with the zoning ordinance, when Mr. Gonzalez was up here.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think with what we already have, I think it shouldn't be a problem to have one of each. We can essentially have an ordinance that changes the PMC that folks can look at, a brief resolution that does the same thing, but just does it in a less formal manner, and then obviously the potential letter. So it won't be a bunch of work to put together.
Okay, okay, all right. I might have a further follow-up question, but I'll ask it later.
Sure.
Mr. Zabel, any other further items?
None.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the next item, item number 13, executive session. There is need for an executive session tonight, discussion with legal counsel about current or potential litigation per RCW 42.30.110.1I for 30 minutes. And that'll be attended by the city attorney. Mr. Zabel, who else will be attending the executive session?
Deputy City Manager and Finance Director.
And yourself as well?
And myself, yeah.
All right.
I tried, but yeah, I probably should go too.
All right, again, with those staff members attending. So thank you. We'll be in executive session for the next 30 minutes, so we'll be coming back around 8:30. Thank you. All right, we're back from executive session, and with no further items in front of us, we are now adjourned. Thank you all for coming.